Welcome everyone to Boomer Works. My name is Shira Lotzer. Happy to be your uh, host tonight, and I am joined by my colleague Michael Butera. We are both volunteers of this organization, and I am co-founder. And we are delighted to have you here. And I'd like to introduce Jen Dalton, who is our speaker tonight. And Jen is a personal brand strategist. She works with executives and folks in transition and helps people to leverage their personal brand to expand their professional network. So Jen, you are welcome to take it away.
Thank you so much. It's great to see everybody this evening. There's a lot of amazing content to cover in personal and company branding, but I really would love for this to be a discussion. I do have content in here, but it's mainly because Shira's going to share the slides after the meeting as well. So if there's something where you want to pause and discuss more, or if there's something where you're like, I can't write everything down and she already went to the next slide, don't worry, you'll have access to the material. So before we jump in, just a little bit of background about me. I spent 10 years in the corporate space doing branding and marketing and financial services. And then 10 years ago, went through my own journey, as each of you are on, thinking about, I don't want to do this corporate job for the next 10 years. What do I do next? And so Shira and I were chuckling a little bit. We've both been on that journey for a while. So if we say something and you're like, I don't know what you mean by that because you're just starting on your journey, just stop and interrupt and ask questions. But I've been doing personal branding and business branding together because I think, as most of us know, people follow leaders, not logos, right? We trust, not just because we like the business colors, even though colors do matter. At least that's what I think, says the brand strategist. So before I jump in, what is a personal brand? What have you heard? Personal brand first was talked about in 1997 in a news article, but that's a while ago. So for each of you, what does personal brand mean? Feel free to shout out your thoughts. Do we each have one?
I guess we're supposed to have one, right? I think it's more of what other people think of you.
Yeah.
I mean, like how people's perceptions of you outside of yourself.
So you do have one. It's just whether it's good or not. We have to ask and see, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else? What else is a personal brand? Any other words come to mind? I'll throw one of my favorites up. Reputation. And for the record, I don't think we're products. I know we're people. I get that question a lot. Like, why do I need to have a brand? I'm a person. I'm not a product. It's like, yes, but we have to decide what you're trying to be known for. We have to decide what makes you unique. And to Christopher's point, we have to know how others see you, because perception is reality. And if you're starting a business, your company doesn't have a brand. It's you to start with, right? And so as we think about a brand and its purpose, I'm going to throw a couple of brands up on the screen. I'd love for you to tell me what words come to mind when you see these. And they're a mix of personal and company brands. What comes to mind? Or Oprah.
Her secret.
You get a car. You get a car. What else?
Yeah.
Money. Lots of money.
Lots of money. Absolutely. How about for Nike? What comes to mind for Nike?
The swoosh.
No, the swoosh.
Right. Absolutely. Shoes, yeah. How about Elon Musk?
Twitter.
The Twitter disaster.
EVs.
Yeah, electric vehicles, space. What's his reputation?
Eccentric. I would put him in the eccentric category.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Would he buy a Nike pair of shoes?
I don't think so.
I mean, Nike's great, but not eccentric enough for Elon Musk, probably. How about Volvo?
Safety.
Classic.
Classic, yep.
My family background is Swedish, so I have to say Sweden.
Yes,
Reliable?
reliable, totally. I mean, my first car, well, it was my mom's car she let me borrow, was a Volvo because it was safe, right? Elon Musk would not drive a Volvo. Richard Branson would not drive a Volvo. Those would be things that are not the same brand, right? So as we think about your personal brand and we think about your business brand, they do need to make sense together. They're not exactly the same. Although my personal brand, and I'll go through some examples, influenced the company I created, they are two unique and different brands that just need to play well together. And when I think about a brand, whether it's your personal brand or your business brand, it really has three jobs. It's about connecting with your audience. So when each of you saw Oprah or Nike or Elon Musk or Volvo, I own you saw Volvo and you were like family from Sweden. All of a sudden there's already an emotional connection. It's about creating confidence. So is it predictable? Is it consistent? Um, Chances are if you go on Oprah's show, you would have won something because everyone always got something every show, right? And so there's this expectation that has been set and that is delivered on. And ideally, if you have this connection and you have this confidence in a brand, once you've gotten to know it, it should accelerate choice. So your personal brand, your business brand is always about creating connection, accelerating choice because people are confident in what they're going to get. Does that make sense? And I like alliteration. One part of my brand is structure, and so you'll see you'll see little things like that, but I'm also very visual. But those three things really make a huge difference. So as we're thinking about the idea you have for a business, what are its brand elements? Is it, Volvo has safety. What words come to mind for your business? What words come to mind for you? And how similar are they? And most importantly, do people know it? Questions on here before we jump into the next piece. Okay. And so a lot of times we are very excited to start a business. I will fully confess, despite the fact of being a brand strategist, I was so excited to start a business. I didn't want to worry about the name. I just wanted to get going. Right. And I had this idea and I was like, let's just go. Don't hold me back. I want to start doing business. And I did, but I did have to come back later and change my brand because I didn't start off with the right name because I was like, I just want to go. And I will say that naming is a pain in the butt for any of you who are trying to get a domain. For some of you who have a domain, it is challenging. And it's important to think of a name that really resonates and makes sense. I invited some of my girlfriends over. We had a bottle of wine and brainstorm names and taglines and what words came to mind. I'm not advocating necessarily that that's what you do, but I do think it's important to really think about what are you going to call your business. If you need to rebrand it, that might be okay, but it just gives you one more obstacle. So one thing I would recommend before you go pick a name, launch, try to find customers, is go about it a little bit differently and start with, what do we think the problem is? Right. And so, how many of you for your businesses right now or the ideas you have a very clear problem statement? Like, this is wrong. I see this in the world and it's not working and it's not working for people. Christopher shaking his head, no.
I
Anybody
don't
else?
know if it's as much a problem as a need, maybe.
Sure. Go ahead. What's the need?
Well, I've got a few parallel ideas. So,
Mm,
my main position now is curriculum writing and managing our curriculum development team. So I see a lot out there as far as needs for, especially in businesses, because I work corporate, to write well and make your message come across clearly and concisely. And that's what I do.
love it. And so one could start from a place of, I make this amazing cookie. Everybody loves it. I'm going to start a cookie business. However, we want to back it up a little bit and similar on to what you were saying. Think about, is there actually a need? Or am I just starting with, I've got an answer? And so researching that need and going out and asking about your idea and trying to do customer research, customer focus groups. And it can be talk to 30 people, 20 people, 10 people, but have some conversations to try to tease out what is really the gap? What is really the need? What words are they using as they describe the challenge? And, it can be tricky sometimes to do because you're asking about your own potential ideas. So we have to be careful about leading questions. So sometimes you want to ask other people to help you. But at a minimum, go out and do some interviews with potential people that you think you would be marketing to. Now you can start with friends and family just to practice it and like figure out the questions and get a sense of input, but then you do want to go out and talk with people that you don't know. But sometimes that can be your friends introducing you to their people. Just depends on the problem you're solving. But once you've got that idea refined through some research, then you can get ready to go and get ready to do something, right? But it's very important to make sure you know what the problem is that you're solving or the need you're answering that you're going to try to deliver on and help address. Questions on this part? Where are folks in this particular sort of stage of the process? Anybody just in the idea, or I'm trying to find what I really want to fix? What problem is there really out there? Stephanie, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello.
Hey.
When you were speaking on the name, I'm definitely in that area. I've gone through a million names, and I'm trying to make my name synonymous with the problem that I solve.
Mm,
And when you said don't focus on the answer, but it's like every time it seems like it's not, it's either to this or it's not enough this or it's to this or to that. So I'm like there. But the problem that I do want to solve is being a cybersecurity consultant firm that cares and saves the most amount of time because of that care. But then it's like the names that I did come up with were already taken. So it's like, and then my name is like, Stephanie isn't the most unique. So even if I did use my name, which I don't want to do, therein lies another issue. So I'm going to use what you said definitely and focus more on maybe a different problem that I can solve or a couple more problems, and maybe the name will come to me out of that, or I'm hoping it will.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do have a framework for what kinds of names are created, right? So part of the reason I use structure is because just like a train goes faster with train tracks, structure can be helpful. So I'll put my email in chat because I'm more than happy because I like all of this kind of stuff to brainstorm with folks on this type of thing. But naming is tricky, and naming so that you also find a domain is tricky.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so yeah, happy to chat with that. I mean, you're right. You can name it after yourself, which is what I did with my first company, the first name. But then I named it after what I do, right? And so brand mirror. It's about reflecting on yourself and figuring out your reputation. So the tagline is reflect, stand out. So I'll talk about that in a minute. Um, but yeah, naming is tricky. I do think it's important. But if you're feeling stuck, I do think you're right. If you go do research and talk with people and get more words to work with, whether it's problem words or need or things like that, the more words you have, the more you can brainstorm answers.
Jen,
To
would
that.
it be okay if I shared a quick technique?
Please, yes.
Yeah, so there's a woman, I'm sure, Jen, I'm sure you know her. Her name is Sam Horn. She's an international marketing consultant. She wrote a couple great books. One is called Pop with an exclamation point, and one is called Tongue Fu. Sam is the one who came up with the word snowmageddon. Okay, so that's her. So she's all about bringing words together. So she has this concept, and actually, this is what I use to come up with my own company name, which is Purposeful Hire. And she says, put down in 2 columns the words that relate to whether it's the problem you're solving, the solution, what have you, how you want people to feel after they've like anything that relates to what you want your brand to be. And then you start mixing and matching, putting words together. So it could be like what Jen did, brand mirror, 2 real, or what I do, purposeful hire. So those are 2 real words put together, or It could be kind of this combo thing, like she did the Snowmageddon, or Accenture. What's Accenture? She just sort of, there's all kinds of ways to do these things, but putting them in two columns with the mixy matchy can be helpful.
So how do you divide the columns? What goes in
You
one
could
column?
literally do two of the same columns. So the words are on both sides. Same words, two columns. And then just mix and match.
I like that because I was focusing more on the names and the problem, but I think that'll help me so much more. Thank you. Because I was like, I need something that I can have my brand be and be easily found on Twitter, easily found on LinkedIn. And it was like, what is my handle going to be? So
Right.
yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna put a tool in chat called, and sure you may already use this, but noam.com. And it is a website where you can type in a name. So let's say, Stephanie, let's say you had cyber care. I'll just make it up, cyber care. And you go type it in, and it will tell you, are the social media handles available? Is the domain available? All in one spot.
Huh.
So you don't have to keep looking across every social media platform. Going, is
Yeah.
this available?
Right.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
I like that name, by the way, cyber care.
That's what I heard when Stephanie was
I know. I was thinking, I was like, that sounds so nice.
Mhm.
well, and again, your domain, if it can be your name, that's great. But it also doesn't have to be if it goes with a question or a phrase or something that goes with your business. You just want to be really careful when you do that so that it's as intuitive as possible. Um, and so I'll share, for me, what I saw that was not working was that too many people are unhappy in their job, which tells me they may not actually be in the right work. They may not be in the right work because they may not know what they're really good at and understand that. Now, this epiphany about this business came to me in grad school, and a lot of my classmates were just coming out of the military. It was an exec MBA program, and they didn't know how to describe their talents and how to translate it into the business space. And so I started to think about, well, I've got this messaging marketing background, this strategy background. Is this a place where I could help? Right. And so that's what I started crafting my business around initially was how can I help people clarify what they're good at and what they want to be doing, passion and purpose, and help them move forward. And so that's when I launched my business, as I said, with my personal name, and then I changed it. And so what I want you to think about it is start with that why, right? What gets you excited? What are you curious about? What problem do you like solving? What problems do people bring to you to ask for help with that you're always answering? Because sometimes we don't realize, oh yeah, the last 10 people who came to me for advice all asked me about this. And this is what we talked about. And so really give yourself space to brainstorm and be creative. The way I shared with Brandmere, or even with Stephanie, with your example, wanting to have a change in an industry, right? Having hair coupled with cyber or whatever that is, right? Think about what's the change you're trying to drive that you'd like to see because you are in the industry. Sometimes we look at businesses and we think, well, there's already 10 of these. Should I do it? Maybe if you're differentiated enough and you're clear on why you're different, but trust me, there's a lot of business out there for everybody. You do though want to have a niche. So if you're trying to serve everyone, you're serving no one. So try to be very specific on who are you helping. Right? Does everyone have a personal brand? Yes. Could I technically help, almost 8 billion people? Literally, actually, no. Do they all have a personal brand? Yes. But who I like to focus on are entrepreneurs who have a very clear, purpose driven message they're trying to grow into a business. Or CEOs who are trying to make their business be more purposeful and intentional. So make sure yours is a thought provoking niche. These are some things you may want to think about answering. So I'm going to share them just so you're familiar with them because I think people define these differently. But there's 3 things you can do. There's your mission, which simply is what am I going to do to get there? Right? People talk about mission and vision. They're very different. Your mission are the tactical things you're going to do to get there. Your vision is where do you want to get to? Your values is how do you want to operate? Because your culture is seeing the values in action. Now, I know this is early on as an idea, but these are things you'll want to think through, right? And the why is why do you exist? What sets you apart from competitors? So if you get stuck on a name or you need a break or you want to think about something, jot down what are the 3 or 4 values that matter that matter to you that you want to embed in your business because that's important to your brand too. Because you might want to include that in your message or in how you speak to people. And your vision is this is what the space I'm going to fix would look like if it were working right. It's one way to look at it, right? I started with what's wrong in the world. What do I see that drives me bonkers? And that's what I researched to figure out is this actually an issue? But for you, what would that look like? I shared mine in here only because you can have it for reference later. But I think it's very important to capture your purpose, to capture your mission and vision. One thing you can do, and Stephanie and each of you, but write down what are the promises you would make to a client. So when someone works with you, what would you want them to experience? Right? Because that's what Tesla is promising when you buy a Tesla. It's going to be electric, it's going to drive smoothly, it will drive you. It has a ludicrous button, not all of them, but some of them. It's modern, it's clean, it's fresh. What would it be like for someone to work with you? Can someone share an example? What's a promise that you think is important that you would want to deliver for a client, irrespective of the problem? What's something that would be important to your brand?
Being on time.
Yes, being punctual. If being on time is an important value to you, then that's a promise you would also want to keep to a client because it would drive you bonkers if you weren't on time. Um, Anybody else have a thought? What would be a promise you'd want to have with a client?
They will be heard and their viewpoint will be considered.
Perfect. Now, when you think about, well, how do you execute on that value? You're asking questions, you're listening, right? You're giving them space. So the promises you're deciding that go with your personal brand and your company brand start to inform your practices and what you do and how you operate. So I share these examples just because I want you to think about these things. They also might give you more words that help you come up with a name or a tagline or content for your website. Because even if you just have a page or a brochure, people are going to want to know what you stand for and what it's like to work with you. Hi, Anne. Hi, Yvette. Does that make sense? And this slide may overwhelm folks, and I apologize in advance, but I want you to have these are things that I've done that may help you as you're brainstorming yours. It's always good to have examples. And as I said, when you make one thing that's important, and Stephanie, you brought this up, when you're thinking about your brand of your business, it's important to think about the name. If you named it after yourself, that has consequences, good and bad. If someday you wanted to bring on a partner, that would be kind of awkward. If someday you wanted to pass it down to your kids, that might work just fine, right? If someday you were like, wow, I hope my business gets bought 20 years from now. Great, but then you got to think about the name. So it's just some of these things, if you can think about it now, that will be helpful. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it if you don't have an exact answer, but these are things to think about. I think it's good just as you're thinking about what kind of business you want. Is it a lifestyle business? Is it something you want to do with your family? Questions before we talk about when should your personal brand or your company brand, which one's bigger than the other? What does that look like? When are they the same? All right, I'm going to jump into that and definitely ask questions because I think when businesses start, like I said, your company brand might be, it's zero because you don't have a company, very low. Your personal brand may not be very high either. It might be kind of low. And maybe that's because we've had the pandemic and people have been sort of quiet. Maybe it's because you're doing it on purpose. If you're in cyber, you might decide, nope, I don't want people to know a lot. It could just be you haven't figured out what you want to say, and so you're by default not very visible. That's okay. Just think about where do you think you're at. There will be some people who, like me, work in a big company, build up strengths, and then leave and start a business in a similar lane. So you have a high personal brand, high reputation for your strengths, and now we're just converting it into your business brand. There's still some work to be done, but you've got some evidence already built up and some reputation, some capital, social capital with people. Some of you may decide you want to purchase a franchise or be a part of that multi-level marketing or license something as a part of your company as you go to launch because maybe you don't want to create the wheel, recreate the wheel. Those organizations already have brands. And so then you're just trying to figure out if they're a bigger brand, that could be good. That could help you go quickly, right? People who in this area did Five Guys early on, super wealthy now if they've sold. Or if you look at Domino's, or if you look at storage franchises, right? There's all kinds of franchises. That may be a good model. That may be not what you want to do. But there are pros to that. You get a lot of support from the corporate office. At the same time, you have to also play by those rules. And you have to share your revenue. So there's just different decisions to think about as you're considering ideas. And that goes back to how much time do you have too? And where do you really want to start from? Ideally, where you would end up is in a place where both of the brands are good, stronger. People know you, people know the business. It depends on what it is where, people may know you more than the business, but hopefully you're growing them both together. So let me pause here. I mean, as you guys think of your ideas or businesses you're trying to start, anybody thinking about a franchise or licensing or anything like that? Or is everybody like, I'm doing this from scratch on my own? Just totally fine. No franchisee people. Well, like I said, it's worth looking at and considering, but there is a lot that goes into that.
Yes, we were looking into a while back doing the Chick-fil-A type of franchises, and they had so many rules. I was like, oh my
Mhm.
goodness, you had no say so as far as where you would be located, so
Mhm.
that kind of deterred me from the franchise uh genre.
Model. Yeah.
Just me personally. I mean, if I could just move anywhere at the whim based on them, maybe, but that's just not something I wanted to do. And then they had a lot of other rules. I'm a rule follower, but geez, that was a lot. They were worse than the military.
But I think, that depending on the success of the franchise, they will tend to have more and more rules, right? Because they're protecting their brand too. So yes, that's a great thing to consider, knowing what you're getting into, for sure. So I think it is this balance. As I said, you do want to have a personal brand because that's who people are going to do business with. And you also want to have a company brand so you look more legitimate. Um, that is also the reality of it. Sure, do you want to chime in or anything you want to add here?
No, actually, I think you covered it. I think we're good.
Okay. So one of the questions I get a lot is branding and marketing. Aren't they the same? And I'm like, oh, a small part of my soul just died. Branding and marketing are really different. And I want to share this just because I think it will help. So there is a place where they're the same. Okay. So when we think about a company name, that is a brand. Nike is a brand. And the name Nike, the brand of Nike also might convince you that if you go buy their shoes, you're going to run faster. You're just going to go do it. You're going to go run. The logo is brand and it's also part of marketing. When we see a logo that we like or a brand that we like on TV and 5 minutes later we're buying it on the computer. That's because all of that together has got into our head around this brand. You like this brand, go do this. And so a lot of people think brand is just the name and the color and the logo and stuff, but it is also part of marketing. But the bigger concept of brand, which we talked about earlier, is reputation. And marketing is simply you take an action and you want your audience to do something. And so when we see an ad campaign, that is marketing. Now it has to be built on a very powerful brand, but marketing is absolutely about I'm asking my audience or my client to do something right now. Here's an ad, go buy. Here's an event, go register. Here's a survey, please take it, right? It's a very real-time action request. And so as you think about how do you build your visibility and relevance, yes, you will need marketing campaigns. However, we want to get clarity on the brand first. And the brand is about why would people be loyal? Why would they stay with you? What's the reputation you're building? What's the niche? What is the reason to buy? What are the expectations you're setting? And so as we think about Volvo, the brand is safety. Now, if you're wanting to get an electric vehicle, but you didn't want a Tesla, and Volvo runs a marketing campaign that says, hey, we've got our new electric vehicles, and you go into the dealership to check it out, because of the brand and because they've asked you to do something, in case you weren't already thinking about it, you go and purchase, or at least go test drive, right? And so branding and marketing are very, very different. We want to have a brand clarity, and that does tell us how we message and what we put in the marketing campaigns. But a marketing campaign is literally that moment in time where you do something and you want somebody else to do something in return.
And Jen, if I could just chime in here as
Yeah,
well, and I
please.
know you would obviously agree with this. Brand also has to do with your value, right? What is the value that you are providing your customer? Now, in sales terminology, that's often called a UVP, a unique value proposition. Some people call it a USP, a unique selling proposition. But it's basically what are the problems that you're in a unique position to help your clients solve? What is the value that they're going to get from working with you? And that leads to your reputation. So think value.
And we want to think of value in the words that our audience would use. So a lot of times when we start a business and we start messaging, we're very excited to tell people in our own words why this is great, why they should like it, why they should work with us. We have to remember, and I'll give some examples in a minute, the messaging needs to be in their words and resonate with them. So the more we tell them about us, the less interesting they're going to be. The more we tell them about how we can help them, the more interested they'll be, right? And so as we think about your brand, let's start with personal brand. And again, I'm sharing this just so you see it. I picked 3 things I think I'm good at. And then I built my personal brand around that. Do not ask me about football. Do not ask me about accounting. Do not ask me about, well, actually, do you like financial analysis? But don't ask me about that. I'm not going to charge you for that because you wouldn't want my expertise there, but I do think it's intellectually interesting, right? I like building reputation strategies, period. I like using structure, which I've already talked about. And I like help giving clarity so people can be more visible and make a bigger impact. Anything outside of that, I'm not building my brand around that. I'm not building my brand around sales. I'm not building my brand around operations, right? So pick the things you're going to say you're really good at and make sure you're really good at them. Or at least very good, and then you're becoming exceptional. We cannot be good at everything. And if we try to be good at everything, it's going to be very confusing for our audience. So from a personal brand standpoint, from a business brand standpoint, pick your lane and stay in your lane. I see a lot of companies, especially in the brand space, who have been doing company branding, and now they're adding in personal brand, which is okay, but that is a different skill set to craft a personal brand. And so as you think about your brand and as you look at competitors, what are they saying they're good at? How do those messages compare, right? because we can't come up with a business in a vacuum. We have to go see, well, who else is out there? What might they be saying? Who does it look like they're targeting? Not so that you're defining your brand because of them, but you don't want to define your brand without looking outwards and knowing, well, how is everybody else talking about this? What are they saying? Where are they visible? What are they doing?
And something else, if I can interject, Jen, is
Sure.
for those of you who are considering having, I call it multiple lanes to your highway. In other words, several offerings, several practices. For example, if you're in consulting, right? If you do that, you really want to make sure that it all hangs together in some overarching brand. I'll make it personal. Okay. So the name of my company I mentioned is Purposeful Hire. Well, I started out, I was really a recruiter, and I'm still a recruiter, but I kept adding on practice areas that all were sort of interrelated. I'm now a career coach. I'm a small business coach. I'm an executive coach. See the connection, right? There's this sort of, employment, workforce kind of a theme. So it all hangs together under Purposeful Hire, even though there are multiple lanes. Now, I do know people who call themselves serial entrepreneurs, and they have different kinds of businesses. And that's okay, but those are different businesses. They're not all together under one brand, because then that wouldn't make any sense for people. People would get confused. So especially when you're starting out, I recommend start with one lane, one practice area, go dig the trench, go run the mile, go find that's what I did. I was a recruiter for a lot of years before I started to expand to other things. I built a reputation. So then when I added on those other practice areas, people trusted me. Oh, I liked her in recruiting. I'm sure she'll be fine as a coach, right? And then it all sort of came together as one larger brand. So that's just a thought for you.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And there is strategy around portfolio architecture, brand architecture, right? When do you start a new company versus add another lane? When do you call it something different, right? That's a little bit more complex, but there is a lot of value in thinking about when are you adding verticals and are they aligned? And do you have permission from your audience to do that? Because if we start adding things that don't hang together, like Shira said, then you're going to erode your credibility. Um, this is a personal mission statement. You can tell when I was born, I liked Mad Libs and I like structure, right? So filling in the blanks. So you can fill in what kind of leader do you want to be, or who do you want to be as a person leading your company? What are you committed to doing? You want to drive a certain change. What's that change? What are the skills you want to use to do that? I think it is important to have your own personal mission statement. You don't have to show it to anybody. That's totally up to you, but it can give you clarity on the why so that you build your company around that. And it's really something you want to do and you're excited about. And so you can see, for mine, my logo and things like that, that all was thoughtfully done based on what I believe in personally, but also what I wanted people to feel when they interact with my brand. And so I'll share that. I'll share that now. Right. So brand mirror, I talked about the name, and I didn't obviously do these animations in order, but this is just a cheat sheet, right? These are brand elements to think about. Brand mirror should be modern. It should be creative. This is a mirror, right, with a piece of it sliding out to make a B. Reflect, stand out. So these all go together. I'm a big fan of taglines because they add an additional piece of information. They shouldn't repeat what's in your name. They should help clarify what you do. Same with the logo. Your colors, right? I want mine to be clear, structure, but also have a pop of approachability and friendliness with green. Railway, it's modern, but it's approachable. The icons, all clean and simple. So just think about what's the look and the feel, and how do you build a brand that aligns around that? Questions on this one, I'm going to give you a different business example. Or yes. This stuff I think is super fun. So if you look at this and you're like feeling nauseous, don't worry. There are people who will help you with this. This is one where you can see the why, right? So the woman who founded this company really started it in honor of her mother. She created a logo that reflects her and the message, right? And it's all about encouraging people to cherish each day and life's sweetest moments. And so the tagline, life is sweet, have a treat. All of this, blends back into the why. The color is high energy, vibrant. It's not slow. It's not don't get out there. It's like, let's go do this, right? Um, Same with the font. Very friendly. You cannot buy happiness, but you can buy cake, and that's basically the same thing. So some humor. Um, and then she's built a whole visual around this, making it a family thing, making it her story. And so that goes back to this idea of an emotional connection, right? We work and buy from people we know, like, and trust. And so if you can share some of your why, that can actually go a really long way. But at a minimum, you can infuse it into some of your brand.
Jen, we have a question from
Yeah,
a
of
coach
course.
Yvette. What's the difference between a logo and a mark?
Great question. The mark, so I'll go back to mine because it's easier to break out. Um, Technically, your mark is just the icon. The logo is all of it together. So when you go to do a trade, when you go to trademark,
Yeah,
your
mark,
trademarking
mark is the
everything.
short form of trademark.
Yep. And so, highly recommend to get your stuff trademarked. So here's an example of a message. So let's say, Christopher, do you have a thought on like what a product might be, or just a business idea?
Yeah, I'm thinking right now of fine art prints.
Perfect. So I'm going to use this model, and I'm going to come back to your example. When we think about a brand message, a lot of times people think functional. So for the last example, sweet treats, right? It's a catered dessert. For fine art, if you just said art sales or art products or purchase art, like, I don't really, how different is that from going to posters.com or allposters.com or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to elevate your message to what's the value add. So Shira started to talk about what's the message that makes it different, the value proposition. Well, in this case, from the prior page, custom desserts, they're unique. They blend traditional, like carrot cake, which you would have historically maybe as a family treat, with some super cool icing that's different and innovative. That's interesting. If I'm a business and I want to hire a company that does innovative desserts and I'm an innovative company, I might buy from an entrepreneur owned innovative bakery, right? For the fine arts, what would be something that is different or unique about it or value add? Is it only a certain type of art, only a certain type of limited prints? Like, what would be unique about it? Is it curated in a very specific way? And those are things to think through. Like, what comes to mind for you as you hear that?
When you said custom the first time, that came to mind. It'd be nice to do custom art prints. I think that's something that not a lot of people do.
And I do think there's a huge exponential growth in that space where things are custom, they're unique. Not everybody can have them, whether it's experiences, whatever it is. And so then we want to think about, well, what's that emotional message? Because now we need to resonate with the customer. Why would they care? We make decisions with our heart, we justify it with our brain. So you're going to ask me to spend $10,000 on a custom piece of art. What's going to be the emotional hook that's going to get me to want to do that? Right. And that's where that customer research is important, because we want to know, what are they feeling that would make them want to buy this? What are they thinking? Because we want to speak to them. And in this case, this is obviously the example for Mrs. Joe, but elevating that message is really important. Going from not just functionally what you deliver, but incorporating that value add. And then if you can, the emotional message, which is what's going to get your customers' attention. How will they feel after buying from you or using your service? Questions on this example? And I would encourage you when you go look at competitor sites or just websites, period, assess their message. Is this a functional? Are they giving me and tell me what's a value add? Or is this emotional? Like, am I going to want to go? Are they speaking to me about how I'm going to feel? Like Nike, just do it. Just do it has nothing to do with functional. It's not about the shoes or the clothes. It's not necessarily even about the value add. It's an emotional message that you're going to be able to accomplish these hard physical tasks that you haven't been able to do yet. Sometimes it's not even about that. It's about go do your dream. That is an emotional message that can get people excited.
Jen, I'll go ahead and share my own example if that's okay.
Yeah.
So mine is my tagline is actually very, very customer centric. So again, I mentioned the name of my company is Purposeful Hire. My tagline is for every hire, there is a higher purpose.
Mm.
Right? It's a real emotional connection. I want people to know my professional heartbeat. And you get it, right? Immediately. In fact, every time I say it, people go, oh, like there's that kind of thing, right? In fact, it's interesting. When I first created it, I said, for every hire, there's a purpose. And then I had a colleague of mine who said, no, there's a higher purpose. That just like took the breath out of the room, right? There's
Yes.
something about that. And then if people ask me what that's about, I'm happy to explain it because I do have a whole message around it. And people can feel that when they work with me, that I really I live out that tagline. So for me, it's a very customer centric message, but for some other people, it might be very much about the product, right? The thing that you're selling itself rather than who you are. So you got to really think that through.
And the beautiful thing about the higher purpose, right, is that speaks to the person you're working with because now they're being invited to elevate themselves,
That's right.
right? And so you're speaking about how they're going to be transformed after working with you.
That's right. And I've actually had people once in a while actually work with me because like they
Yeah.
saw the time like, whoa,
Absolutely.
that resonates with me. And then everything in my website speaks to that. Like on my career coaching page, I quoted, I think it's from Teddy Roosevelt. It says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Absolutely.
Right. So there's a theme here that I try to, take forward.
And I think as you build your brand, you'll find those quotes, those images, those snippets that connect the dots between the functional, the value add, and the emotional. And for people who don't care about higher purpose and they just want someone who does their resume, probably not a good fit.
Although
Right.
they can work with me, right? But
They can work with
I'm
you.
trying to attract the people who care about
Right,
it.
exactly. You want to attract people that do care, but you'll
Yeah.
still help the other people that don't. Like you'll
Right.
accept them.
Yes.
You want to attract the best people for you. And so your market message, your brand really can help people self-select into working with you or not.
That's right.
And so here's another way to think about this. Who's your audience? What do you need them to know, feel, and do? Just keep it simple. I need to know this, I need them to feel this, and I need them to do this. In the case of Purposeful Hire, I need them to know that I'll help them be hired. I need them to feel really good that they're going to be elevated to a higher purpose, a higher calling, a better role, a better opportunity, a new future. And what I need to do, I need them to call me. Right. And in those messages, or go to the website, whatever the call to action is. But in those messages, that's what we want to make sure we do. What does your audience need to know? They may not know some things at data points. They may have different assumptions that you want to speak to and you want to meet them where they are and move them forward. Can anybody think of an audience that they have in mind already? And what do you want them to know, feel, or do? Be brave and gutsy. You can do it. Well, I know for fine art, if it was custom, there are lots of things I'd want to know. Is it literally only one piece? Is it 10? How do you validate the pedigree of it, right? The authenticity of it. What do you want them to feel? They're going to feel like it's a wow experience from the time they call you, a white glove, amazing experience. And maybe it's for, memorable moments in your life that you want to capture this piece of art, or maybe you traveled somewhere and you want a piece that helps you remember that, right? What do you want them to do? Well, you want them to come do a virtual tour of the gallery because maybe they're not in your market. Okay, well, then you've got to have a virtual tour on your website, right? So it's just thinking through, know, feel, and do. Sometimes we think about what we want people to know, but we don't talk to them about whatever it is in a way that makes them feel what we want them to feel. And some people are very good at the feel, right? They get you excited, but they don't give you all the information. We all have just different personalities that communicate differently. Some people get you super excited, but they hate actually closing the sale and they don't tell you what to do next. So that's why I just know, feel, and do those three things. And that will help you figure out, do you have your LinkedIn profile set up right? So people know, feel, and have an actual next step, or your website, or your business card, or an event, right? Know, feel, and do. That can help just make sure you've got all of the pieces in mind and messaged effectively.
And something else to consider, and you mentioned who is your audience, right? That's on the left side. That's really important because different audiences are going to relate to the know, feel, and do differently. When you're speaking to an
Absolutely.
event planner, you got to be speaking to the urgent problem that you're going to help the event planner solve. But if she were Miss Joe, if she were marketing to moms, right? That would be a completely different know, feel, and do. So the audience really matters.
And I will say, if you have 10 audiences, that is way too many. Consider 3, at most 5, right? Because then that's a whole lot to manage. And so be very intentional about either industry or person.
Yeah.
A lot of people will develop personas, right? Who is this person that might buy fine art? Where are they? Where do they read? What do they read? Where do they get information? What do they care about? Um, who influences their decision? Like maybe their wealth manager or a close friend, whatever it is. But you really want to get into the head of your audience and know what matters to them.
Jen, would you go ahead and share I'm happy to share mine as well, but would you share your persona of your ideal client and where you connect with them?
Sure. So one of the groups that I go to often is 1 Million Cups.
That's how Jen and I met, actually.
Yep. And part of it is because entrepreneurs, they usually are coming from a corporate space or a business space and they want to do something different. They might know some of their personal brand, but they really need to figure out, how do I elevate that message now that I'm going to start a business? How do I figure out my why? Maybe they don't know it completely, and turn that into a business. And so that's a great um, opportunity for me to help them flesh out the why for themselves, but also for their business and their messaging and their brand around them. And I love business strategy. So for me, I am looking at a lot more complicated facets, but the core is the why. Once you get the why and the audience, then you can start to build from there. But that's what's exciting for me.
And for some of you, you're going to be thinking about your audience in a starting out with in a broad way. So some of you might be familiar with the terms B2B, B2C, B2G. B2B is business to business, where you're a business marketing to another business. B2B is your business marketing to a consumer, an individual. And B2G is your business marketing to the government, which we're not going to talk about here. That's a whole other thing. But if you're marketing to a business or to a consumer, it's a lot easier to have a persona, right? In my line of work, because I have multiple lanes to my highway, I actually have a B2C business and I also have B2B. And I have different targets, for one of my B2B lanes, my recruiting, I market to an industry, a sector, which happens to be the association sector in my case. And I have a couple of different people in that sector, CEOs and HR people. And I know kind of how to engage with them. Where do they hang out? I hang out where they hang out, or I convene groups where they can hang out, right? That kind of thing. So I try to make myself visible specifically to the people, figuring out where they're at. And there's a consultant named David A. Fields. He's a consultant, independent consultant, and he has this great phrase. And he says, fish where the fish are. Where is your fish pond? Those folks that you are trying to reach, where are they swimming? Go swim with them. And then they'll see that you're part of the pond. You're part of the school of fish.
And I think it's important to remember that sometimes you have to be creative in how you find them, right? It may not be just go to a networking event in this industry and you'll find your people. Depends on what level they are. Maybe you'll find them at a charity function instead. Maybe you'll find them at a sporting event. Who knows, right? But thinking about those audiences and really getting clear on who do they listen to, where are they, and on LinkedIn, for example, you may want to join groups of your peers to know what they're talking about in this new business space. You also want to join groups of where your customers would be too, so you can listen to what they're saying or what issues are they facing. And obviously, for different businesses, LinkedIn will be a great fit. For some of you, LinkedIn will be a decent fit. And there are other places, but definitely think of in person and also online. You never know who's going to know people either. So it can be helpful to ask, your friends and connections, do you have anybody I can do an informational interview with? I just want to learn more about how do they think about this type of problem. You're not trying to sell them, you're just trying to do some research. So just something to think about. But I do think you have to know your audience, you have to know your competitors, and then you can start to triangulate where you fit and how you fit.
And some of you might not have obvious competitors. Sorry to interrupt you. And I know there's
Yeah.
somebody on this call who joins us regularly in Boomworks who has a very, very niche business. This person may not have a lot of competitors, right? And that's okay if you want to forge ahead, but you have to kind of know where your space is. And if you're going to offer something that's super, super niche, which by the way is a really good thing, you got to know exactly who buys your products, who needs what you have to offer, and who's going to pay for it. And then you could capture that whole market, right? If you're the one person, right, who does that very, very nichey thing, that's a great thing, but you got to know who wants what you have.
Well, and when I ask an entrepreneur, do you have any competition? And they say no. That's like, like it's like a red flag. Stop. Because you may not necessarily have a direct competitor, but there's always the opportunity cost of they're doing something else because they don't know about you, or they're not doing anything because they don't know about you. So there is something else taking their time or their treasure that it's not coming to you. So where's it going instead? And there's always competition. We just have to reframe how we think about it. It's whatever they're choosing to do because they're not working with you. And so it's important to go understand those opportunity choices and how do you then get in front of them and do some education around them. Question on the audiences, again, no feel and do. I like keeping things in threes. It just makes life simpler. But that's a great way to assess as you're practicing, what messages resonate with you, and maybe pick some brands you like and look at how are they marketing? What are they saying? What do you like about it? Look at ones you don't like, why it turns you off. Those are things that can help you just gather information and be more informed as you're creating your own brand and business identity. And services versus products are different. However, the brand and messaging is just as important. So definitely, I tell my clients, telepathy is not a strategy, right? If you want someone to know something, you have to actually tell them by either writing it on your website or saying it when you're meeting with them. And the reason we market, the reason we have a message, right, is because we want people to know who we are. The more they know us and see us, hopefully, the more they like us. Hopefully, the more they like us, the more they can trust us. But that credibility is important. And so when people are getting ready to start to build a website or to build their message, what evidence do you have? And this is important because evidence markets for you while you're out meeting with people. LinkedIn markets for you by having a profile while you're out meeting with people. Your website or your social media presence, whatever it is, markets while you're out and about. And so, I did this last year, right? So I'm 10 years into my business. Last year was 9 years into my business. But yeah, you do want to get photos of you doing stuff. I do a lot of speaking, so I get pictures of me speaking. If you need to have pictures of you working with a client, and you do work with clients, but you don't have clients who want to have their picture taken, call Shira, call me. We'll just sit in the office with you and have our picture taken, right? Like you can create those images, especially if you have confidential clients, so you can show yourself in action. Stock photos are not helpful. They're fine, right? Which, as I informed my husband, fine is not a good word when you're describing how I look. It needs to be like beautiful or amazing, not fine. And so you want to have pictures that show you doing your action, whatever that is. But again, as long as you're doing it and you're just creating the photos if you need them, I think that is totally fine. You cannot always have someone there to take a picture when you're in that moment delivering value for a client. And then think about simple things like your email signature. Um, do you have a one pager, not a resume, but like an executive bio that you could share if you don't have a website yet? What do you have on LinkedIn? What's that first impression? So you just want to start to gather your evidence and identify where you have some opportunities, where you have a gap that you want to fill. But just start by gathering your evidence.
And by the way, if you're ever working with a marketing professional to help you do this, these pieces that Jen is talking about are called marketing assets. That's the technical terminology, marketing assets.
You might hear them say marketing collateral, marketing assets. When you get your logo done or a headshot done, you want to have high quality versions and you want to have low quality versions that don't take up a lot of space. But you might hear vector file or things like that. It's just stuff that you want to make sure you get all of the assets you need for a website or for print or for for LinkedIn. And what I would say is don't spend a lot of money doing it on your first website, right? Figure out your message, your brand. You can always spend money later, but I'm not a big fan of cash going out the door in the beginning. I mean, if you have a lot of cash and disposable income, I guess have fun. But usually your messaging and your branding, as you learn more and more about the clients you're serving, it will evolve and change within the first year for sure, if not year 2 and 3 as well. And so give yourself a little bit of time to pause and learn. Do I need to elevate or update my messaging? Oh yeah, I have learned a lot. Let's tweak this or change that. But just be mindful of those points of investment because I don't think you need to invest.
And so you can actually go on to do what's called using a website builder, which are free to use. Now they cost to host, but you can build your website for free. And I'm going to put in the chat here 4 of them: GoDaddy, Wix, Weebly, and Squarespace. Okay. It's sort of a plug and play. So it's not hard to learn. Just go in there, play around with it, and you can literally just move things around and create a pretty little website for nothing. And then you'll have, then they can host it for you, which costs like $40 a month.
And not all entrepreneurs are this way, but there are some entrepreneurs who want things to be perfect before they people in general who want things to be perfect. In the entrepreneurial space, perfect is the enemy of good in the beginning because you're still learning. And so you may just have a one-page website that's just a landing page that people can scroll through and see, and it just has your business name, your photo, a tiny bio about you, what you do, and like, here's a form to contact me.
Yep.
And that's okay, right? Just get a placeholder out there. You'll have time to add on other content as you need it. But sometimes we want to buy the Cadillac or the Ferrari, and we just need a bicycle right now just to get from point A to point B. And so just, keep in mind what you're building based on where you're at right now with your business and what your audience believes you should have. But give yourself a little bit of grace as you go to figure some of these things out. All right. Oh, let me go back. One thing I was going to say about LinkedIn, definitely you need to have a LinkedIn profile. If you don't, I highly recommend it. And as Shira was saying, building a website is important. Another tool that I use if you're not ready to even do the hosting yet or any of that is Canva. And it's also a free version. I'll put it in chat. And I use that to create, LinkedIn banners, or I use that and it's drag and drop. It is much easier than it might sound. But I also use it to make a mock-up website just so I can see it and go, oh, do I like that? No, yes, because it's also drag and drop. And if you hear, Sharon and I talking about this and you're like, what? This still sounds too hard. Just reach out. Like, we're happy to give you more insights. I'm happy to have a a call and just chat through some of this.
Yep.
But I think from the beginning, right? Think about what messages do you want to have, and where is your audience, and where do you need them to be? And you can think about what evidence is missing. What other evidence might you need? And that's where looking at competitors can help too. And also asking your audience, asking potential clients, what evidence would they like to see? What would make them believe in a business? What's credible? Maybe they want testimonials. Maybe they want a case study. But what is the evidence that's most compelling? And that way you can just slowly start to build it. You know, the other thing to think about, and I think from a personal brand standpoint, this is always a tricky one. As I said, telepathy is not a strategy. So one of the ways you can let people know, get to know, like, and trust you is to do a blog. Or if you don't like writing, record a Zoom meeting just with yourself, answering some questions or talking about your business or introducing who you are. Use your phone if you want to. I think Zoom actually works pretty darn well. There's plenty of editing tools and things like that, but just practice getting comfortable talking about your business first. You don't have to share it online, but at some point you'll want to figure out, you're going to either want to decide what should you do and what do you need to pay someone else to do. And at some point there's going to be tension there, because you know, if you're trying to do your own books, for example, that might be one that you want to pay an expert to do. You might muddle through the website piece, but at some point you might want to ask for help and pay someone. But there are people who are happy to charge you a lot of money, and there are people who want to work with startups and will do a good job for a good price. So, you know, if you hear someone saying, I'll build a website for 5 or 10 grand for your first website, I'd probably press pause on that.
Yep.
And build something yourself, right? You're learning right now. If somebody's trying to sell you a CRM for $5,000, don't do that. You don't have clients for your CRM yet. That might be a good future investment, but not at the moment.
CRM is a customer relationship management database
Thank
where you
you.
have all of your contacts.
Yes. So from a brand strategy, from a personal brand or company brand, what other questions can I answer? What's come up for you? And Christopher, I see you taking lots of notes and you wanted to learn more about brand strategy. And I own you were looking and talking about messaging and brevity and launching a business around that. What elements have I not covered? And there's always a ton, because businesses, there's a lot to them. But what other questions do you have? Or Cheryl, Stephanie, or Anne, or Yvette? I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hi,
Well,
Jennifer.
I just want to thank you. Here's my mind map.
Yay, I love it.
So I'm writing things down, and I purposely, one page, but I've got stuff all over. And so my eternal issue is always the focus and where to start. And I picked up on the no feel do, but I went back to the emotional value added functional. And with curriculum, I mean, it's hard to get people excited about that, but I really am, because it's more to me about information and research and getting your ideas down on paper. And that's where I have the value added. I could put it down on paper and make it make sense. So I went backwards, almost like the functional part would be, where are we going? Where do you want to end up? What's the product? Where are we going? And then the value added, moving backwards, is like the structure or map. And the map is a part that I picked up on. Done a lot of traveling, love traveling. I actually want to be a digital nomad. So the map part to me really speaks to what I want to do, is to map it out for people. And then the emotional part is getting that aha moment, getting people excited. I mean, I've done courses from welding to shipboard cranes to mindfulness, and it's just all about, as you said, purpose. So I get, a bottom line question is, for someone like me, where I've, just got a lot of ideas, it's just trying to put it together. What's a good first step for me and maybe others?
Sure. I'm a big fan of the functional value add emotional. partly because I made that. So I'm always biased to my own stuff. But again, for me, structurally, it made sense because I can go look at competitors and it's like I can say functionally, literally, what is my business doing? I'm writing curriculum, I'm documenting research, whatever that is, right? Or I'm helping research get published, whatever that is. The value add is if you have experience in that, what's the value add? And I'll look at what competitors have. What are they saying their value add is? Is it saving you time? Is it less stress? Like a lot of people use those words. Mm, and that might be true, but then you're not sounding any different.
Mhm.
And so then, really brainstorm what am I really doing that makes a difference for someone? And then that emotional is, when I think about curriculum and capturing that, you're accelerating them. Let's say you were doing curriculum for a business. Let's say someone wanted to launch an online course, but they need curriculum to go with it, for example. You're helping them build a legacy. You're helping them build a whole nother revenue stream so they can have freedom to do other stuff. Right. So again, going back to Shira's point, that entrepreneur audience for curriculum creation, that message will be very different than if you're a teacher or if you're a state introducing new curriculum or if you're an association introducing curriculum, whatever it is, that message will be different. And so really getting clarity on the audiences that you believe you can help. And I think looking at that, at the competitors and looking at the functional message, what are you technically delivering? What's the outcome they're going to get working with you? How does that compare to competitors? What is the value add? How can you be different than competitors? And sometimes the words can sound similarly, but the way you say something and the way I say something is different, right? The way Shira says something, the way I say something is different. We are not going to resonate with everybody. Some people might hear me and go, Jen. Some people might hear Shira go, Shira, right? That's perfect. There are plenty of customers out there who need help. So that's where being your own voice and really finding your voice and the ideal customer for you is important. So that's where I would start. Audience, competitors, and what's your value and the functional value and that emotional messaging. And you can do that on a page. So it's not like I don't want like a research paper. No, you can do it on a page and just jot down notes on a sheet of paper. Just do some initial research and get started.
I like your idea of finding your audience, and I immediately went down the street to the Crystal City Sports Pub thinking, maybe it's philosophers and
Curriculum on craft beer,
Well,
but
think,
I think for each of you that's a good place
Yeah,
to start if
yeah,
you
yeah.
haven't done
when
that.
you
Yeah,
think about
yeah.
audience, it's gotta be who has got the problem that
Mm,
I can help solve, who wants to
mm.
pay me to solve it.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
Good idea.
because they have the need doesn't mean they want to pay or can afford, right? You. So that audience identification is not for nothing. It is a big deal. Like
Yeah,
you got to
yeah.
start there. Then when you find, then everything else flows from there. Then you can figure out the messaging to them and how to network with them and how to sell to them and all the rest of it. But you gotta find your school of fish.
Yeah, I think, yeah, thank you both, because I think that's it, to pinpoint the audience. Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, and I think I'll share my screen just to give an example. Shira was talking about a value proposition. This is one that for Airbnb, when they originally started, right? Who was their target market? People who didn't want to be at a hotel, people who couldn't pay that much, but they still wanted to travel a lot. And they didn't really care about staying in someone's house. In fact, that makes you feel like a local. So you get access to a lot more. And so if you think about your target market, in this example, Airbnb, youthful people, adventurous travelers. What's the frame of reference? Well, it's accommodation. That's what Airbnb provides. It's accommodation. But what's the point of difference is that you're experiencing it like a local. You're not at a hotel, right? If you're at someone's house, chances are you might be near a really cool neighborhood or right be near the city center. You don't know. And what's the attribute? What does it allow you to do? Go to whole new places that you couldn't afford before, or that maybe just didn't feel exciting because you really just wanted to be like a local because you wanted to immerse yourself in culture. So again, there are lots of frameworks for how do you have your value proposition and how do you figure that out? And again, this is a plug and play. You could put in your target market. You can put in, well, what is it you're doing, right? So for this group, I'm developing curriculum. What's the point of difference? So that's the differentiation from your competitors. And what does it allow people to do? What's that attribute? So I'll put this in the deck as well when I send over to share. But I think that that value proposition, what makes you different, being really confident in that goes a long way, because then you have a lot more clarity on the value you add. I think Yvette might have
Yeah.
had a
Yeah, you
question.
had something to say earlier?
No, I want to just say I'm sorry for being a little late, but this has been valuable information. Thank you so much for sharing. I have so many notes. I just have to go back and digest it all. It's such great information. And I was just thinking today, I need a branding coach things, but what you gave tonight is just so valuable. I just so appreciate it. But on that note, do you think as we think through these things that it would be valuable to pay a branding coach as you start out, or is that something you kind of just do as you go along?
Always the favorite answer of everyone, it depends. So there are lots of resources that you could take advantage of to get insight and feedback. I mentioned 1 million cups earlier. If you have a business question like, what's my value proposition? You can present that at 1 million cups and get free feedback from people. And I'll put the website in chat. There's over 200 of them across the country, but I'm an organizer for the one in Fairfax, and it's all virtual at the moment. But that's a free resource. You know, there are SBDC resources. There is
Small Business Development Center.
yes, thank you. Small Business Development Center, Mason Enterprise Center in Fairfax City, although they have a bigger footprint. So there are actually a lot of people who will mentor and help you. You still may find you want to hire someone. And again, it just goes back to cash flow and budget and what works for you. Some people will just have a consult, you know, with you and see if you're a good fit and help you along the way. And I'm happy to talk more with you, you know, outside of this conversation and just brainstorm. I do consults for fun because I like all the stuff I do. But yeah, there are people who you can pay, and certainly there are free resources too, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I put a link in the chat of where the video of this recording and the PowerPoint deck will be in the next couple of days. So feel free to grab that as well, Coach. And Jen is a branding coach, so you are certainly welcome to reach out to her as well. I also do some of that work, but please feel free to reach out to Jen.
Thank you. I will. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Stephanie had a question, but then she lowered her hand, but I'm happy to answer another question. We have a few more minutes before we wrap up.
Oh, thank you. The other question I had was, once you find your audience, you know how to communicate, you found you're fishing in your pond and you have your school of fish. When it comes to the competitors, well, no, let me focus on the school of fish. With the school of fish, how do you know what questions, or I guess what thought process do you need to have in order to make sure that you're in the right pond and this is the school of fish, or knowing what they think and knowing where they go? And then once you do know these things, when you're thinking of the competitor, how do you have that unique value proposition? Whereas though, you know what they're offering, and like, how could you know what they're offering and know that you do it better? Like that part.
I do
A light question.
Yeah, that's an easy one. We got that. And like, just
Sorry about that. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I think some of it, if you can do customer research in advance and go out and just do informational interviews, right? Ask people, what are their greatest needs right now? What have they invested in the last 12 months? What are they thinking about investing in the next 12 months? What are their biggest challenges? That going and asking that question, people like to help. And especially if they think at some point you may be able to help them. Usually they're willing to share that information. Virginia has a huge cyber initiative where they also are working with George Mason for cyber interns and other stuff. So Stephanie, I can talk with you outside of this too on how to access those resources and access other information. You can actually get a lot of insight from competitor websites. It won't give you everything, but it at least will start with messaging. Um, what most people don't do right now is follow up. What most people aren't doing right now is getting back to people. Um, and so I think, unfortunately, the bar is a little bit lower than one would like. I'm not saying you should do the bare minimum. I'm just saying don't underestimate the value of service and the experience someone has with your brand. That can go a very long way, along with functionally, are you doing what they need? But I think a lot of that comes out in discovery when you're asking clients questions or prospects questions, and you're out networking and just getting to know people. Um, and I would set a time frame that you want to do that research in, like 30 days or 60 days, whatever that is. But really go dig deep and ask lots of questions, because then your goal is to just gain knowledge. You're not worried about also selling. Because I think sometimes that can be distracting too when you're at a networking event and you're trying to sell, but you don't know exactly what you're saying yet. Just go to learn. And if they like you in that conversation, they may follow up with you anyways, right? Um, so that's what I would recommend.
And I would also say that when you're thinking about your audience and you're trying to get kind of niche, this is how to sort of, kind of figure out your school. First of all, think about what is it that you're trying to offer, okay? Now, turn it around. Who out there do you believe really would want what you have? And also, who do you want to work with? I'll give you an example. So one of my lanes is career coaching. Well, look, I could be a career coach probably to anybody, hypothetically. And there are some people I know who are career coaches to a very specific market. Some only do executives. I know a coach who actually two coaches who only work with recent grads. Okay, they have very specific niche. I happen to do mid to senior level professionals. I do some recent grads. I do some, but I have this sort of niche, and that developed over time. But when I think about who those people are, then I have to think, well, where do they hang out? Well, in my case, a lot of them hang out, well, either groups like this, job seeker groups, right? So I come and I speak to job seeker groups, or I volunteer, or I start my own. I actually have one that I run on Friday mornings called Higher Moment Mastermind. So I'm visible to my target audience. I'm offering them something, giving them something. And Stephanie, that's a really great way to get noticed by your school of fish, is volunteering, educating, speaking, offering yourself for free, being part of that community for the good of it, just to help people.
Yep.
And that's part of the know you, like you, trust you, because then people say, oh, wow, she actually cares about us. I want to work with somebody who cares. And you're being authentic about it. This is not a manipulative at all. You truly, genuinely care about helping that community. And then they will want to do business with you. I'll give you another example. I mentioned that in one of my in my B2B areas is I work with the association sector. Okay. So I have run over a 10-year period, a couple of CEO roundtables, peer roundtables where CEOs get together and they talk amongst themselves. Well, I remember distinctly once I got a client and she told me that she was part of one of my groups for years. And one year, after a bunch of years, she came to me to actually work with me. And I said, why? I don't know. I just kind of was talking about it. She goes, Shira, because whenever you were running those meetings, she said, you never sold yourself. It was never about you. It was always about us. You cared for us. You educated, you helped us, and I could trust you. So that when I actually had a business need, you were the one that I wanted to come work with, right? So you hang out with the School of Fish and show them that you actually genuinely care about helping them. Then they're going to want to follow you.
The other two things I'm going to sneak in before it turns 6:46. One is think about what is a small offering that you would sell, like a strategy session. What is a medium offering? 5 weeks, 2 hours a week, I don't know. Whatever it is, what could that be? And what's a large offering? It's very helpful just to put that on paper, and I'm expanding even more on what Shira was talking about. What are you going to offer if they say, so how could you help me? You need to have something ready to go. Well, let's start with a strategy session, right? Whatever. But define what that is. Would you deliver a report? Would you do an assessment? Like, what would you actually do? And come up with 3 or 4 things, and then come up with what would you charge, right? And so I do think it's important at some point you got to have the money conversation around what do I need to be able to make revenue wise, and therefore profit wise? And what am I charging for a small, a medium, and a large engagement? And how many of those could I do in a 40-hour week? Or whatever time frame you're trying to set aside for this business. So, some of that's very practical, but it also will help you really think about, do I want to write a report or do I want to do a video report? Like, what am I delivering? Do I want to meet them in person? What are the stages I would walk them through of a cyber project or whatever? So it's important just to start to tease some of that out. So hopefully that gives you something separate to think about, but that will also help you know what kind of work do you actually want to do and what would you charge. And you don't have to get it right the first time, but start to flesh that out and know, again, small, medium, large, what would that look like?
Terrific. Well, in respect for everybody's time, first we want to thank Jen. Thank you so much, Jen. This is fabulous. Appreciate you very, very much. And as we wrap up, I just want, for those of you who are new to BoomerWorks, so I'm the co-founder. We started this a number of years ago, and our mission is to inspire and empower professionals age 50 plus to re-career into self-employment, and everything that we do is free of charge. And I wanted to quickly share with you our website. For those who aren't familiar with it, it's boomerworks.org. And just to give you a 2-second around the world here, if you want to see where our upcoming meetups are going to be, you click on our meetup tab, go to upcoming events. Here is tonight's presentation, and down here we have already booked out speakers all the way through March, so you can see what we've got going on there. Secondly, I will be posting the video and the PowerPoint, as I mentioned. It'll be under the training center right here under Marketing Your Business. And if you want to see our previous educational programs, you can just scroll on down, and we got a whole bunch of them. And all the way at the bottom of the page, we have downloads. So these are PowerPoints from all of our different programs. And then finally, if you are not currently on our mailing list but want to be kept abreast of these programs, and as opposed to just going through Meetup, go hit our join button, join our community. Simple little form. Promise we will not spam you. You'll just get a once a month promo from us to let you know, what we've got going on. And with that, we will close out. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And feel free to reach out to Jen or to me. We are happy to help. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Jen, could you stay on?
Sure, of course.
Thank you. Y'all have a great day.
You
Wonderful
too. Have a
meeting you
blessed
all.
day.
Bye.
Bye.